I was considering retiring from my YouTube videos because of harassment from my ex and her minions, but then I decided that living in fear is no way to live life. Makes me also think of this obsession recently with these two escaped prisoners in upstate New York who have since been killed and captured. That people freak out. They get scared when elements they consider dangerous, right? So we cordon off people that we consider unfit for society, and but when they escape, to me it's very symbolic of the things inside of us, our deepest, darkest, ugliest emotions that we want to cordon off and isolate from our consciousness. And we freak out. We get scared when they are let loose. So just like these prisoners, we want to contain them. But again, living in fear is no way to live. To all these guys wanted to do was to get away from the harshness of our criminal justice system. Not to excuse their past behavior or to say all prisoners should try to escape or whatnot, but it's understandable. There are much more dangerous elements of society that are roaming free right now, and yet we're obsessed with these couple guys because, like I said, our deepest, darkest emotions, we want to kind of safely seclude them from society, from reality, and really, it's not about cordoning people or emotions off. It's about kind of confronting them honestly and with compassion. Anyway, the topic that I wanted to talk about was actually free will. And what made me think of this is that I was recently introduced to YouTube videos by Spartan Life Coach. And I was really impressed with what I saw from him. I mean, he was very smart, well-read, and more than that, more importantly, just very aware. He also talked about meditation. Personally, I think he could have emphasized that more, but I think, pretty much everything he said was on point. But one of the things that he focuses on that I find kind of, I don't know, that I have mixed feelings about is his tendency to talk about people's issues in terms of kind of the terminology of psychology, like borderline personality disorder and narcissism and that type of thing. And the reason I have mixed feelings about it is that, on the one hand, I recognize the truth of what he's saying. But on the other hand, it's by labeling things as a psychiatric disorder, it kind of takes away the element of free will, as if these people couldn't help themselves, that they were primed to act the way they were from their early childhood. And again, I think there's truth in that. But he discusses this himself in one of the videos that I saw, where the nuances of free will. He didn't want to get into that because he thought it leads to a kind of bunch of mental masturbation among philosophers. And again, I'm very sympathetic with him on that point, despite being trained in philosophy myself. But I think there's something to be said for investigating this idea of free will. I don't think ultimately free will is a matter of this kind of radical freedom of the existentialists, that we are totally free to determine whoever we want to be. I think that's nonsense. In fact, I'm much more sympathetic to the idea of freedom of the will represented by or presented by someone like Kant. Kant basically argues that, look, on the one hand, we're either slaves to our feelings, to our emotions, to our sensibilities, or the other option, and the only other option, is being rational. And being rational is our freedom. Instead of acting based upon our emotions, we're acting based upon a universal reason. And so I think there's something really right about that. That's what freedom is. But where I disagree with Kant is that acting rationally is not, I think, a purely or can't be a purely intellectual enterprise. That to act rationally, to understand something, that's great. That's a good start. Understand why you're doing what you're doing. Hey, I was raised by crap parents, and who were narcissistic, and that led to all sorts of ego issues with me in terms of boundaries and shame and whatnot. I think that's a great start. But to understand something intellectually is one thing. To understand something in your bones, so to speak, in your body, that's what's really critical. And that, again, is where something like meditation, I think, is necessary. So you just don't theorize about it, but you actually get to the root of where your actions are coming from. And I can't help also but think of my own kids and how, I feel so bad for what they must be going through, the lies they're being fed by my ex, and as kids, since parents, especially the mother, in this type of context in particular, parents are like gods, and so they're going to take all of that in, and so that's it hurts me that they're going to be conditioned this way. At the same time, there's nothing really I can do about it at this point. Like I try to have at least some type of relationship with my kids. Not all of my kids, the kids by my second wife. Luckily, that this doesn't apply to my oldest. But the relationship with my second ex, it was like literally toxic, in that any contact poisoned me and everyone who was around me. The comments when I wasn't monitoring my Facebook account, the comments she would make when I had when I friended her in order to have some type of access to pictures or whatever of my kids. The comments she made to my extended family. I'm still suffering through the repercussions of that. I've become totally alienated from my siblings, from my cousins, in large part. I'm not going to blame it all on her. I fed into this. This was, I made things a lot worse, but just because of my contact with her and my desperate desire to have some type of relationship with my children, it just poisoned everything. And so I realized, there's some relationships that you just have to completely cut yourself off from. It's easy to say, these are my children that are being affected. But tying this back into the actual topic of free will, this is where I have hope. Like someone like I said, this Spartan life coach, like who seems, I didn't see or I didn't hear the details of his own childhood, but he seems to have been able to overcome some of this baggage. That's what I hope for my own children, that I know they're going to have this baggage now, and I know there's little to nothing I can do about it at this point in life. But this is where free will comes in, because no matter how much baggage is accrued, to me, free will is maybe a way to put it is a kind of turning of the mind. That's as much as we can do, because nothing, going back to this idea of this existentialist radical idea of freedom, nothing is unconditioned like that. This is intimately related to the Buddhist idea of conditioned or dependent origination, that everything that happens is tied to something else, and so you can't just decide something and make it happen. It's related to other things, and it's going to be related to things in the future. But what we can do, our limited free will, if you want to use that term, keep switching this music, our limited free will is just this kind of turning of the mind to go tie this back into Kant, to try to make things rational, to understand them. And in understanding them, we have some type of freedom. We're not just slaves to our emotions anymore. But like I said, it can't just be a theoretical understanding. It has to be an understanding in your bones. Going back to these disorders that are so common among people today, I think, the reason we can have these terms and understand what they mean, like borderline personality disorder or narcissism or that type of thing, is that our culture kind of feeds into a certain egoistic mindset, and that so many people have been permeated by this poison, to use that word again, and childhood, and this goes back to an earlier post, is so important that it's inevitable that these effects will be felt across the board by a lot of people, and as tragic as that is, especially how I feel personally in my own circumstances, what gives me hope is, again, this ability that human beings have, that only we have, that other animals do not have, kind of turning the mind in a way where we can make things more rational, and like I said, not just theoretically, but deep in our bones, and that takes work. It takes meditation, it takes mental discipline to do that, but at least it is possible. All right, thanks, bye.